Hello and welcome to Push Your Glasses Up. I'm Mikey.
And I'm Rena, and hi.
Hello.
I just did finger guns, because I found a mood ring, and it's green.
So, were you shooting a mood?
I am a mood. It's a whole ass mood. I'm sorry.
I won't argue.
Oh, boy.
We are back to go over the final two episodes of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or as it's been renamed at the end of the last credits on the last episode. I do want to start out saying I really liked the finale, but the episode before it I think was the stronger episode of the show overall. Mm-hmm. But the payoffs in the final episode are tremendous. But what did you think?
I mean, I'm kind of looking at it as like a show as a whole. Like now that we've completed it and these are the final two episodes, I thought it was incredible. I mean, you know me, and I'm dead inside and not very many things move me, but there were definitely several times throughout, especially in the last couple episodes, where I'm on my bike getting my exercise in and I just feel my eyes start to well up. Just an unusual feeling for me.
Well, you're exercising and nobody likes that, so I understand crying during that part. But yeah,
but it really struck a chord with me, and it was phenomenal writing, phenomenal acting. Everyone deserves a friend like Sam Wilson. Can we talk about how great of a character Sam Wilson is? Just straight up.
And that's a good segue into the things that we encounter with the fact that a big part of his character that they're going back to now that they can kind of focus on it is his ability to connect with people who are trying to live through the trauma and stresses of what they've been experiencing in their life, specifically soldiers and that sort of point of view. But it's just it's a very good thing to focus on for this character, not just as Sam Wilson, but as Captain America, because you want somebody in that role that is a sympathetic person that is willing to listen before, just punchy shield throw. Yeah.
And I would say obviously there's a lot of the theme going on in this show is a comparison to Steve, right? As Captain America and the values that he upheld and who he was as a fundamentally good person. But it almost seemed like it took, until these last couple episodes for Sam to realize he's that level of good. He's 100%, if not more so, because of the way that he can be there for others. In a way that Steve kind of tried, but obviously he's not a trained, trauma counselor like Sam is. But yeah, that really struck a chord with me. I would say in terms of temperament, he's almost even dare I say, this might be blasphemous, even a little bit better. Even just a tiny bit better than Steve Rogers, because he can just see both sides.
I mean, that's the thing is it's not whether or not one of them is better than the other. It's that they're good at different and similar things, but not being the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that we get that perspective now. We get those scenes where he's Captain America now. He is going to, on camera, just tell this senator, no, this is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And for everybody to see it, it was that moment of people are whether or not going to accept him as this mantle. Mm-hmm. It was a moment that people needed to see to say this is the right guy. This is the right guy to do this. He is showing why he as a person can fill this role, not why he is replacing Steve. And that's something I noticed in the coverage of Marvel changing over some of their social media stuff the other day to be Sam instead of Steve on the Captain America handles and stuff. a lot of the coverage on it was Marvel replaces Steve Rogers with Sam Wilson on social media. But it's just, I was like, a better way to phrase that, I think, is just to say updates rather than replaces, because
he's not taking it away from Steve.
And that's the whole thing, is he's
the next
goes
one.
out of his way in this series where his own realization is that he is not replacing Steve. He is just being who he needs to be. And I appreciate that they gave that focus in those moments. I
like how the second, I was going to say, I like how the second to last episode, we really got to see, like, really dove into, like, Sam as, like, a person, and, like, when they were regrouping after everything that happened in the previous episode, and that was the build the boat episode, and, you know, like, why it's easy to believe that all of those people are really his family members in his community, and that they really love him. Like, it felt like we were watching almost like a reality show at that point. Like, it didn't feel like a scripted series.
That, the penultimate episode of this season felt like two shorter episodes that were, like, just back to back. Just the tone, and because it starts out with them taking the shield from Walker. Like, that was an intense fight scene, and then to see them go through just what it means to, like, have to have that friendship between Bucky and Sam, to watch us actually see them, like, forming a stronger bond. I think that meant a lot to have that in there. So I'm glad that we got kind of those two sides of the coin in that one episode, because if it was just, you know, hey, here we go, they took the shield and now he's here, it would have been fine, but not as meaningful, I don't think, than to have it, like, them playing, like, having a catch with the shield, like, having a nice moment where they can just toss the baseball back and forth and have a conversation. It anchored that whole episode. And then you go through the kind of 80s montage with Sam, and, like, you see him work towards where he needs to be, and his
Eye of the Tiger montage.
Yeah, it was just really, really solid stuff.
But the shield thing you bring up is interesting, because one of the things that seems consistent and almost like a big metaphor is the dropping of the shield. And, like, I think it was something that Sam had to get through, that you will falter and you will drop the shield, but that is not the same as, one, desecrating it with blood. Like, you don't disrespect the shield like that. And two, it doesn't mean that you're not deserving. Like, we always look at Steve by comparison as this, like, perfect, and, like, what Captain America, but, like, the only person that knew him before that was Bucky. Like, he's the only one that has the perspective that Steve wasn't always perfect, and he didn't always make the right decisions, and, you know, like, long before he, like, became Cap, like, he was just, like, a regular dude. Like, he wasn't, they all know
just
him
wanted
after
to do
like,
the right thing.
They just all knew him as, like, an icon after that.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like, the nice comparison between Walker and Sam, is that he's just like, how I have to live up to this, like, I have to be this guy. And that puts an immense amount of pressure on him, which he can't take, where Sam is like, no, I can live up to Steve's ideals as being a good person and what the shield means, but I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
You were going to talk about Isaiah Bradley, too, speaking of people who've carried the shield.
The jumping more to the finale. So this entire series, I was like, man, there's a lot of meaningful stuff here, and it obviously hit me emotionally, but, like, the finale, like, getting to the point where Sam says, hey, I got something to show you, and takes him to the Smithsonian to see that, like, he went out of his way to make sure people aren't going to forget you, that people will know the story about what you did and what it means for this country and what that means for so many people, was just like, oh man, that moment hit me so hard, that, like, opposite end of you, we know that I tear up on everything, but like that moment in particular was just like it was a really beautiful moment to see them embrace and to see Isaiah be able to accept that like you can still do good if things didn't go your way, and that it's worth remembering those efforts that were put in, even if it fucking sucked for years afterwards. And that's
he was still a hero.
That's even just my perspective as a white person. I can't even imagine what that might mean for somebody else that has gone through an even harder experience than I could ever imagine going through. So, yeah.
Can we talk about, like, I was going to say, can we talk about Sam just getting shit done?
Yeah.
Just getting shit done. Like, that whole episode was him just being like, oh, hold on, like, I fixed this. Carly was stopped. Like, I've done this. I got a new suit. Like, I'm taking care of Isaiah Bradley, being honored as the hero that he is. Like, just doing all the things. Like, well, man, he was very productive.
But that's the thing, is that it also, he gets a lot of stuff done, and a lot of the action stuff in the finale is super fun and really like hyped up and stuff. But I appreciate that they were like, no, we're gonna end this on him not succeeding. He didn't want Carly to die. He didn't want that outcome. So the imagery of him carrying her down, like replicating in Angel of Death in a way, it is very meaningful to see that, like, it's gonna suck. Like, it's an important job and it's cool to have that job, but sometimes it's gonna fucking suck, and it can suck right away. And I appreciate that they didn't just go with the clean, like, oh, we're gonna send her to the raft and it'll be fine, like, whatever. Because I think it means a little more to show that it's going to be a hard fought battle, especially since, like, there was some back and forth on, like, even we talked about it, the way Carly was like sympathetic at times, but then was just like, no, fuck it, we're gonna burn down this building, and like hard to handle that duality because they didn't really like nail that aspect. But I think they nailed the way that she's lost at the end and what that means for Sam. So yeah.
I think they did a better job with her by the end, because you could see when she made her decisions, they weren't confident decisions. Like, there was always the air of, no, we have to do this. This is the only thing that they'll respond to. But you didn't, like, fundamentally believe that she believed that.
Yeah.
And, like, her followers were a little iffy at the time, like, as well.
Well, in the finale, they didn't even respond to the phrase call out. So, yeah. Like,
one people, one world, or whatever it was. But, like, you know, it was always the, how can I do this? What can I do? Like, it was more of, like, she didn't seem quite frantic, but it was almost like she was becoming more and more frantic the more scared she got. And I think that's what Sam really noticed in her, was that she's young, she's scared, she's trying to do right by these people over here that obviously have been wronged. And I guess when, you know, half the population just pops back up after 5 years, it's a very complicated situation, but it was not being handled right. Like, I would agree with her too if I was like, oh, well, people disappeared and then the remainder just kind of moved on and moved to different places and different houses, and then poof, everyone came back. It's like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, you don't just kick people on the street because suddenly there's an influx of people.
I mean, they didn't say it, and they were showing a lot of different people, but you can imagine with all, like, the racial tensions here and all the things going on in the world today, which people do you think that they would kick out? Yeah. Like, you know, so I like that they didn't fully go there, but, like, if we place this in modern times, and there was obviously a lot of what's going on in today's world, like, influenced and referenced throughout these episodes.
Yeah. So on the lighter fare aspect, What'd you think of the suit?
I like the suit.
It's a little different than what they did in the comics for him. It's not exact 1-to-1, but it's pretty close. I like that they went with the white wings with like the undertones underneath it and stuff, as opposed to the red wings that he has in the comics.
Mm-hmm. Well, they changed up Red Wing too. Like Red Wing is not an actual.
Well, I'm talking about literally his wings in the comics being red, not that. But yeah, Red Wing, yes, is a robot in the MCU.
And then we see him giving the previous suit over to Joaquin, so that who will take up the mantle of Falcon later on. Yeah, and Taurus, they really seem like they're going towards Young Avengers here. Am I wrong?
I don't know with this story. Obviously, with other stories.
No,
yeah,
with other stories.
I think we're going to, like, we already got confirmation that Captain America 4 is happening. Mm-hmm. With the showrunner from this show.
Ooh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, he's going to be at least co-writing the script, if not doing it by himself. I don't know. I don't recall exactly off the top of my head, but he's going to be doing Captain America 4. I don't know what that means because the end of this episode, the end of the finale, ends with, instead of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it says Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And so does that mean Captain America 4 ends up becoming Captain America and the Falcon? Is that season 2 of this after just a solo movie for Sam? Is that so there's a lot of stuff to go through with that potential, but there's something even bigger in the theory side of things that I have, and it's something we haven't really touched on in this episode yet, which is Sharon.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the other characters. We're like fanning over Sam right now.
Well, we talked about Isaiah a little bit too, but
a little bit.
But yeah, the stuff with Sharon is interesting because in the last episode that we did, I was like, I don't necessarily see her being the power broker. That was immediately in the second to last episode shown to be the correct thing, is that she is. So I was wrong on that, but something that, like, it still doesn't seem like her character to me, just because we didn't actually see her have the like shitty times that they referenced. So, and I've now seen a couple other people say this, but I thought of this like as I was watching the episode. We have Secret Invasion coming up. What if Sharon's a Skrull? And what that could mean for her being back in, like it said, her old job, but I would assume it's more Sword now than Shield. But
Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Yep.
Or is it the CIA? Wasn't she in the CIA towards the end of? She was at the fall of Shield.
The end of, because she was in Shield with Winter Soldier, or in the Winter Soldier.
And at the end of Winter Soldier, she was in the CIA. Remember, she's like at the shooting range.
I don't remember the specifics.
Either way, she has access to highly
government
classified
agency that is a highly classified agency. But yeah, it's the fact that like we didn't see her make the turn, so that's why it always felt kind of out of character for me. But if it's in that context, it could be that she is a Skrull and she is possibly infiltrating for that, because we don't know who she was talking to. And there's obviously like the Julia Louis-Dreyfus of it all at this point as well. So there's like a whole other, what does that mean for, because that's Lady Hydra or Madam Hydra.
Yeah.
But before that, she's a higher up in S.H.I.E.L.D. who was Nick Fury's lover. So what does that mean? Where is she at this point? Because we don't know that either. So I think that's where we might see.
And like, is there still Hydra?
Well,
Like,
well, that's the thing is Hydra's like always.
I know, but we
there,
just
no matter
haven't
what.
heard from them in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. Well, I think that's sort of the thing that we're gonna see them maybe return to with the Cap stuff in the very least, because they are always around in some way. It's a matter of like how open it is that something is Hydra, because there is like in the comics they had like undercover Cap as a member of Hydra and stuff. So, yeah. So I think that we'll see more of like the maybe Hydra stuff with the Captain America storylines, and then we'll see maybe some of what that means for like the Sharon stuff on top of that with like the overarching, because I could see Secret Invasion being the Avengers show of, or the Avengers movie of the Disney Plus shows, where they pull together the Young Avengers and then from there they move them up to the movies a little bit more, because we'll have spent time with everybody at that point. So, you know.
And that's better than giving everybody their own origin movie. That's a lot of movies to make.
Yeah, and it's like you get to learn about the characters a little bit more in an origin that takes place in the shows anyway. So, yeah.
But speaking of Hydra, there's one former Hydra agent we haven't really talked about whose journey was also pretty incredible, and that was Bucky. And like watching his redemption arc, which I thought was like brilliantly played by Sebastian Stan, where it wasn't like overt. It was like much more subtle, where you know a lot of it is going on in his head.
Yeah.
Or his little tiny book.
Yeah.
But, you know, him coming to terms with no longer being the Winter Soldier, having his autonomy, and what does that mean now? Like, how do you start your life over?
The second half of this season gave him a showcase. Because he's playing a character that, for the most part, hasn't been able to emote. Like, it's just been a quiet suffering that the character's been going through.
So dark.
Doesn't emote is the point. But yeah, it's interesting to see that, like, to see that character progression that we finally got. We got to see that moment in Wakanda where he breaks free of his coding, and we see him start to heal a little bit of himself that I think he hasn't been allowing himself to, but obviously is the thing that is needed to move forward.
It was all about both characters believing they didn't deserve certain things. Yeah. Believing he didn't deserve redemption for all of the things that he had done, and Sam thinking that he didn't deserve the shield, even though they both talk about how Steve was like, no, you both deserve both these things. Yeah.
And that's that's the thing is, as much as Steve can say that, that's almost more of an expectation when you have Steve Rogers saying that you deserve something. Like, that's a lot to live up to make sure you don't disappoint him.
I like how Steve Rogers,
as much as he wouldn't care, but
I love how Steve Rogers is a character without actually being on the show.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too, is like at one point Sam says Steve's gone. He could be dead at this point. We don't know. He could be retired in Florida in one of the Bocas.
If Peggy's gone, like, you know, Peggy passed away in Captain America 3, do you think he would last too much longer from there? Probably not. You know how those old timers are.
Sure.
They go downhill pretty fast after the first one goes. But yeah, I thought that Sebastian Stan did like one hell of a job, and it was amazing to see the Winter Soldier theme and him walking down the dock, I think in the last episode, instead of walking as him, as Bucky, instead of walking as the Winter Soldier. Yeah. Like those sound cues were amazing.
That's another thing too, is some of the reactions that I've seen to the episode is some people who aren't necessarily like as familiar with Marvel stuff, like maybe they were more DC centric in their lives growing up, like watching the kind of funny reactions and stuff. Some folks have said that they're a little unfulfilled by the fact that he still is going by the Winter Soldier, because they were thinking like it's him moving on past who that is. But in reality, I think it's more that now he's owning it. Now he's owning his past, and he's accepting it and trying to be better from there and trying to make that name mean something good now. And so I understand why somebody that may not have the connection to the character that's deeper than just these movies would think that. But I do think it's a little more of him trying to say like, no, this is me. This is who I am, or at least was in the past. It's not going to be forgotten. It's just going to be in my control now. So, yeah.
And also, it's like there was a Winter Soldier program. Like, he's not the only one that's ever been called it, the same way there's been multiple Captain Americas. So it's his moniker to own and do with it what he wants to now. Literally crossing off the red in his ledger.
Right. So, yeah, I'm
still mad we're not getting Winter Widow, but that's just gonna have to let the Bucky Natasha thing go.
Yeah, I think so. It's something I think that's been a required thing to give that away for some time now. But.
Or hear me out. What if Black Widow comes back and we're like, oh my god, there must be some magical thing, but it's actually a Skrull, but we still get that moment, and that would be awesome.
Wouldn't that be more damaging though? If it wasn't actually.
He's doing fine now. He can handle it. Just let
No, I don't mean for
this.
him. I think I mean for the fan base being like, oh, it's finally happening. Oh, you just baited us into that. Yep. I think that's the reaction.
Maybe I've been watching too much anime.
Yeah. I think the reality is that's the thing is, if it came to be, there would have to just be backstory of them connecting in the past. I don't think you could have her come back at all and make stuff meaningful. I
don't know. Scarlett Johansson can play anybody. She can literally be anyone.
But I do think that would be a tremendous like firecracker to throw into a crowd of people.
I'm feeling spicy today. I already told you I was feeling spicy before we started this podcast.
But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this show came out. It's like I think I said this in the last time we recorded, but like it's not exactly the perfect coverage of a lot of these topics, but I think broaching the topics that they did as head on as they did, it may not have been 100% head on, but like it was pretty head on. I think it's going to mean a lot to people who have needed it or like needed to hear it from a sympathetic standpoint. But I think it's going to mean a lot for people who need to hear it in a way that makes them realize that you shouldn't be a fucking asshole to people just because they're born a certain way or, you know, look a certain way. Like I think it's going to be it's a very approachable way to broach these topics that can then be discussed further, as opposed to like it's a superhero movie or show. It's not going to solve everything in what it talks about, but it's going to allow those conversations, I think, to open up a little more for who needs it. So yeah.
But also just seeing representation on the screen is always important. Yeah. And, you know, people get all bent out of shape about like wokeness and like forced diversity, but like nothing about this was forced in like any way, shape, or form. Like everything just worked. Like
the context of the conversation. This is what it should
be.
The context of the conversation that they were having when they were having a toss with the shield, and Bucky saying Steve and I didn't understand what it would mean to give the shield to a black man. Mm-hmm. And then to immediately say, and we're sorry. Well, he said, and I'm sorry. That's a important moment for people to take away that don't understand the perspectives of other people. Like, it's nobody's saying that people can't make mistakes, mm-hmm. but acknowledging and learning from them is the most important part of making the mistakes.
Bucky is the one who should have known better. Steve missed the whole Civil Rights Act. Like, he missed all of that. So I'll give Steve a slight pass, a slight
to be
privilege
fair, Bucky
pass.
Also kind of missed it by
he was
not
at least
being himself.
There.
But
yeah, like they didn't get it, and I felt like a lot of it was like, you know, Bucky was kind of taking on like the point of like a more privileged person, like the white friend who doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And not because they're like a bad person or they don't want to get it, they just haven't experienced it for themselves.
Right.
And like, especially when he starts going at him, like in the earlier episodes with the cops, when they stop Sam and he's like ready to throw it in, like, no, you can't do that. Like, yeah. You know, he's ready to take his metal arm and fight people. And, you know, and Sam is very calm. Like, what's going on? And just that like perspective, like you don't get it. And it's like, here's the other thing. It's okay that you don't understand. Like, it's okay to acknowledge, like, I have not experienced this. I don't understand. I think a lot of times trying to be a good person, you want to like be very empathetic and you can put yourself in someone else's shoes and imagine what things would be like. But being able to imagine and even feel those feelings is not the same as living through it.
Yeah. And
like it's hard. Like, you want to be empathy. You're like, oh my God, I understand. Like, I know how that would feel. Sure, but you didn't actually go through it.
Yeah, there's things that we will never fully understand. There's things that we can be empathetic to, but not necessarily sympathetic to, because mm-hmm. we just haven't and will never experience those things the same way. So, and
it's okay. Like it's okay to say, like, you don't have to try. Like, it's okay to say, like, I don't truly know what it's like to be in your shoes, and respect that.
Right.
People have a hard time being like, everyone wants to be like, oh yes, I know everything, but no, you don't.
Yeah.
It's not a ding on you. Nobody's because you don't. 100% it's just an acknowledgement. Yeah. But that's what, like, to your point about how, like, they did a pretty good job of taking on these issues, like, head on. You know, it might not have got it right. I think it's more important to try than to make it perfect.
Right. Yeah. Get it out there, and you can always do better next time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Everybody's learning. Everyone's improving. Things should get better. That's how things work. You should move forward.
Yeah.
With life, with storytelling, with everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say I think that that's probably a good place for us to leave off on this episode, because I think it's a topical thing that kind of rounds out this whole season of this show. So mm-hmm. We will be back soon with a far less serious thing with Mortal Kombat pretty soon. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, though, bye.